My mother stood up at my birthday dinner, tapped her glass, and smiled at the room like she was about to give a toast. The candles were lit, the whole family was watching. I had my fork halfway to my mouth. She said, "Before we eat, I think it's time we're honest. You were never really one of us." I put my fork down. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved to defend me. Then my aunt slid an envelope across the table toward my mom, slow and deliberate, with a smirk on her face like she'd been waiting years for this moment. I had no idea that envelope was about to change everything, just not the way they planned. My name is Callie. I'm 37 years old, and this is the story of how my family tried to erase me from my own grandmother's legacy, and how she made sure they couldn't. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a paralegal at a mid-sized firm downtown. It's not glamorous work. I spend my days reviewing documents, checking filing deadlines, and making sure details don't fall through the cracks. My colleagues trust me. My supervising attorneys rely on me. But to my family, my job was always just paperwork. I grew up in the shadow of my older brother, Derek. He was the one they talked about at dinner. He was the prized child, the one they always praised, the one my mom would bring up in every conversation, whether it was relevant or not. Derek got the college fund. Derek got the car at 18. Derek got the benefit of the doubt every single time. I paid my own way through school. I worked nights at a call center while taking classes during the day. I graduated without any help from them, and I built my career from scratch. But no matter what I achieved, it never seemed to count. My relationship with my mom was conditional. One wrong word, one boundary, one moment of disagreement, and I'd be reminded in some quiet but cutting way that I wasn't quite measuring up. So I kept showing up. I helped when they needed help. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. I told myself that if I was patient enough, consistent enough, good enough, eventually they would see me. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the one they always praised, but I had something none of them knew about, and it was about to speak for itself. If you grew up feeling invisible in your own family, always doing the work and never getting the credit, subscribe to this channel right now. You belong in this community. Tell me in the comments, were you the overlooked one too? I'm reading every single reply. Let's go. To understand what happened at that birthday dinner, I need to take you back 3 weeks earlier. My grandmother, Nana Ruth, passed away quietly in her sleep. She was 81 years old. She had lived in the same small house for over 40 years, and she had a modest estate, nothing extravagant, a house, some savings, a few pieces of jewelry she loved, but enough to matter. The family gathered at her house 2 days after she passed. I thought we were there to grieve. I was wrong. By the time I arrived, the living room furniture had already been claimed. Sticky notes with Derek's name were on the armchair, the bookshelf, and the side table by the window. My aunt had already gone through the jewelry box. The kitchen smelled like coffee and efficiency. They weren't mourning, they were dividing. Derek handed me a garbage bag. He did it without looking up from the box he was sorting through. "You can take whatever's in the back closet," he said. "The important stuff's already been handled." I went to the back closet. It was mostly old coats and shoe boxes, but on the top shelf, behind a folded quilt, I found an envelope. My name was written on the front, in Nana Ruth's handwriting, that looping, careful cursive I'd known my whole life. I was still holding it when my mom appeared in the doorway. "What's that?" she asked. "It's addressed to me," I said. She crossed the room and held out her hand. "I'll hold on to that. It's probably nothing." I didn't hand it over fast enough, so she took it, just reached out and took it from my hands. "Mom, that's addressed to me." "This is a family matter, Callie," she said, already turning to leave. "You always make things complicated." I stood in that closet for a long moment. The smell of old fabric and cedar was thick in the air. I felt something heavy settle in my chest, that familiar weight of being told that things that belonged to me weren't really mine. Later that evening, as I was leaving, my grandmother's neighbor, Mrs. Holt, caught me on the front porch. She was an older woman, quiet and careful with her words. She glanced toward the house, then leaned in slightly. "I don't want to overstep, but your grandmother met with a lawyer about 2 months ago, privately. I drove her there myself." She held my gaze for a second, then went back inside. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I started driving. The first blow came about a week later. I found out through a mistake. My cousin Bria meant to text Derek and sent me a message instead. "What time is the meeting with the estate attorney tomorrow?" There was no meeting I'd been told about. I showed up anyway. The address was a law office on the east side. I walked in and found my mom, Derek, and my aunt already sitting across from an attorney I'd never met. When my mom saw me, she stood up and met me at the door before I could even sit down. "This doesn't concern you," she said. "We'll fill you in later." "It's Nana Ruth's estate," I said. "That concerns all of her grandchildren." "We'll fill you in later," she repeated, and closed the door in my face. They never filled me in. Not that day, not the week after. When I asked Derek what was discussed, he told me it was complicated and that I shouldn't stress about it. When I pushed, he stopped returning my calls. The third blow came at a family dinner my aunt hosted. It was supposed to be a small gathering to share memories of Nana Ruth. Derek stood up after dessert and gave a toast. He talked about her garden, he talked about her cooking, he thanked my mom for being a devoted daughter, and thanked my aunt for all her support. He went around the table by name. He did not say my name once. Not once. Afterwards, I found him in the kitchen. "You didn't mention me," I said. He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "Don't be so sensitive. You weren't exactly close with her." That one landed hard, because I was close with her. Not loudly, not publicly, but Nana Ruth and I talked. We talked on the phone every Sunday. I drove her to a doctor's appointment in February when everyone else was busy. I sat with her in that house and listened to her stories for hours. I was there in the quiet ways that don't make good toasts. But I didn't say any of that to Derek. I just nodded and walked away. And that night, I started keeping records. The third blow came exactly 1 week before my birthday. My mom called me on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice measured and deliberate, like she'd rehearsed what she was going to say. She told me the family had made a decision. Nana Ruth's house would be sold. The proceeds would be split between her and Derek. She said it was a matter of restructuring and that it had already been discussed with the attorney. "I'm a grandchild," I said. "I have standing in this estate." "You have nothing signed," she said, "and if you make trouble, it will only make this harder for everyone." "I'm not making trouble. I'm asking a basic question." Her voice went flat. "Sign off quietly or don't bother coming Sunday." I came on Sunday. I sat at that birthday table. I watched my mom stand up with her glass and her smirk and her prepared words, and I let her say every single one of them. Because by then, I already knew something she didn't. Here's what they never considered. I work in a law firm. I process estate documents every single week. I know what a proper probate process looks like. I know what filings are required and what steps cannot be skipped. And everything they had done, the private meeting, the closed-door decisions, the way they talked about the house being already handled, none of it matched a legitimate estate process. What they didn't know was that I had already made copies of everything I found in that back closet. Every document, every folded paper, every scrap with Nana Ruth's handwriting. I photographed the sticky notes on the furniture. I saved the voicemail where my mom told me to sign off quietly. I built a quiet, careful file over 3 weeks while going to work every day and saying nothing. And the sealed letter my mom took for me was not the only thing Nana Ruth had left behind. My grandmother was not a careless woman. She was precise. She wrote things down, she kept records, and she knew exactly which person in that family paid attention to details. The attorney's office had a second file, and it had been waiting. They thought they had already won. They hadn't even seen the board yet. I got a phone call on a Thursday afternoon, 9 days before my birthday. The name on my screen was one I didn't recognize at first. Kwame Osei, attorney at law, retired. I almost didn't answer. He introduced himself calmly. He explained that he had handled my grandmother's legal affairs for over 15 years, before the family switched to a different firm about 3 years ago. He said he had seen Nana Ruth's obituary in the local paper and that he was reaching out because he felt he had an obligation to. "Your grandmother came to see me privately about 6 months ago," he said. "She was worried about exactly what you're describing." I sat down. Mr. Osei explained that during that private visit, Nana Ruth had asked him to draft a secondary will, not to replace her original documents, but to clarify and override specific provisions she felt had been mishandled by the newer firm. The document was properly executed, notarized, 2 independent witnesses, legally airtight. In it, she left her house and her primary savings account directly to me. He had never contacted the family because she had asked him not to unless and until it became necessary. He believed it was now necessary. We met in person the following Monday. He was a quiet man, precise in the way that experienced attorneys often are. He showed me the document, he showed me the notary stamps, the witness signatures, the date. Everything was exactly as he described. He advised me to say nothing before the birthday dinner. Let them feel certain, he said. Certainty makes people careless. He was right. In the days that followed, my mom booked a beach vacation using money from the deposit on the estate sale. Derek posted on social media about honoring Nana Ruth's legacy, alongside a photo of himself in front of her house. The comments were full of people praising him. I read every one without responding. I showed up to my birthday dinner with my folder in my bag and my phone charged. I sat down at that table and I watched the candles burn, and I listened to the sound of my family laughing and clinking glasses. I noticed the way the room smelled like my aunt's particular brand of perfume, something floral and too strong. I noticed how nobody pulled out my chair. I noticed how the seat they gave me was at the far end of the table, away from the center of the table. I noticed all of it, and I said nothing. Then my mom stood up and tapped her glass. She looked right at me when she said it. "You were never really one of us." My aunt pushed that envelope toward her with a smirk. Inside, I assumed, were documents they expected me to sign, some final legal step they needed to close out the estate on their terms. The table was quiet. Every face was turned toward me. I set my fork down gently on the edge of my plate. "Actually," I said, "I think tomorrow morning is going to be more interesting. Mr. Osei's office, 9 a.m. You're all welcome to come." My mom frowned. "Who is Mr. Osei?" Derek leaned back in his chair. "She's bluffing." I picked my fork back up and finished my dinner. They showed up the next morning, not because they believed me, because they wanted to watch me fail in front of a stranger. My mom wore her good coat. Derek walked in with his hands in his pockets, like he was doing someone a favor. Mr. Osei's office was small and orderly. It smelled like old books and warm wood. He greeted everyone without warmth but without hostility. He asked us all to sit. Then he opened the file. He read the will slowly and clearly. He did not rush through the part where Nana Ruth named me as the primary beneficiary of her home and her savings account. He did not soften the language. He read it exactly as she had written it. When he finished, he set the document on the table and slid the notarized copies toward each of us. My mom's voice was sharp and immediate. "That's not valid. She had another will." "She did," Mr. Osei said. "This one supersedes it on the specific assets in question. The date, the notarization, and the witness signatures are all in order." "She was old," Derek said. "She didn't understand what she was signing." Mr. Osei looked at him without expression. "She came to me alone. She arrived by herself, asked specific legal questions, reviewed the document twice, and signed it in the presence of 2 witnesses who are prepared to confirm her capacity if challenged." Then Derek turned to me. "You manipulated her. You went behind our backs and got her to change everything." I opened my folder. I laid out the printed emails first. Emails between Derek and the new estate attorney dated 3 months before Nana Ruth passed, discussing the property transfer as if it were already decided. Then I put down the dated photos, Nana Ruth at her kitchen table, the Sunday calls logged on my phone, the February appointment card from her doctor's office with my name written next to hers as the person who brought her in. Then I laid out the timeline. The family had visited Nana Ruth 4 times in her last year. I had been in contact with her nearly every week. "I didn't manipulate anyone," I said. "I just showed up, quietly, without an agenda." My mom's voice cracked. "After everything I did for you." I looked at her. I felt calm in a way I hadn't expected. "You told me I wasn't family anymore," I said, "so I'm going to handle this as a legal matter." She didn't have an answer for that. The property transferred to me 8 weeks later. The savings account followed shortly after. It wasn't a fortune, but it was real, and it was mine. The first real asset I had ever owned. I didn't sell the house right away. I drove out there on a Saturday morning and walked through every room. I touched the walls and the window frames. I sat in the kitchen where Nana Ruth used to drink her tea, and I let myself feel it, the fullness of what she had done for me. She had seen me when no one else was looking. She had planned for this moment with more patience and care than I ever knew. I had the floors refinished. I painted the front door a deep navy blue. I made it mine. 3 weeks after the legal process closed, Derek sent me a text. It was 3 sentences long, something about how things had gotten out of hand and he hoped we could move forward. I read it once. I didn't respond. My mom called twice. I let it go to voicemail both times, and I didn't feel guilty about it, not even a little. I spent 37 years trying to earn a seat at a table that was never really set for me, trying to be good enough, quiet enough, patient enough to finally belong. But Nana Ruth didn't need me to earn anything. She watched, she understood, and when the time came, she made sure the record was clear. I didn't need them to see my worth. She already did. If your family has ever excluded you from something that was rightfully yours, a decision, an inheritance, a conversation, a moment that belonged to you, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Because what happened to me happens to more people than anyone admits, and most of them never find out there was a second file waiting. You are not dramatic for wanting to be included. You are not greedy for asking what is fair. You are not making things complicated by refusing to disappear. Click Hype to help this story reach others who have been written out of their own family's story. Standing up inside a family conflict is one of the hardest things a person can do. It costs something, and if you've been there or if you're there right now, I want you to know that this community sees you. Subscribe and become part of something that understands this kind of pain. If this story helped you in any way, let me know by clicking Hype and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.